Well, hey guys, I am going to be working with multiplying fractions by fractions today. And I'm going to try my best to get used to using this document camera as I teach this lesson to you. It's going to be a little bit new for me, and I appreciate your patience. I'll pause it for a sec. Okay, and so for example, yesterday rather, we talked about how multiplication was like the word of. So for example, when I said 1/2 times 10, we knew half times 10 is the same as half of 10. We know half of 10, of course, is 5. And that was kind of weird for some of us at first, thinking when you multiply, your answer would get smaller. The product actually became smaller because it was half of 10. We took this bar and we called it 10. If I cut it in half, each would be 5. Half of 10 would be 5. So our answer 5 actually got smaller even though we multiplied. We're used to multiplication having answers get bigger, but when one of the factors is a fraction less than one whole, the product actually decreases. And that's the same thing that you'll see with fractions today in our lesson. So for example, I'm going to take this big fraction bar, and if I wanted to cut this in half, I've just cut it in half. And I'm going to shade in half. We all agree that I have 1/2 shaded in. But if I wanted to find half of that half of the shaded amount, I would cut that 1/2 in half. And so half of 1/2 is this amount right here, which we can clearly see is 1/4. If I cut the other half in half as well, so we'd have equal pieces, there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 equal pieces. Half of 1/2 is this amount right here, which is 1/4. So half of 1/2, or 1/2 times 1/2, is 1/4. So we could say 1/2 of 1/2 is 1/4. We could also say 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4, because times is the same as the word of. Let's look at a problem that is similar to what we were working on. Here we see a fraction bar, and we can clearly see that half of it is shaded. Here the question says, find 1/3 of that shaded part. So I'm going to find 1/3, sorry about that horrible glare spot. I'm going to find 1/3 of 1/2, because clearly half of it is shaded in, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that shaded amount and break it into thirds. I'm going to shade in one of those thirds. And since I broke this half into thirds, I'm going to break this other half into thirds too. So I have equal pieces. And now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal pieces. And that 1/3 of that half that I shaded in pink and blue, kind of purple, is 1 out of 6 now, right? Because it's 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1/3 of 1/2 equals 1/6. We could also say that 1/3 times 1/2 equals 1/6. Okay, so now let's say you wanted to find 1/4 of this shaded part. And clearly the shaded part, of course, is half, right? Half of the bar is shaded. I want to find 1/4 of that shaded part. Of means multiply. So I'm going to find 1/4 of, which is times, of 1/2. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that shaded part, that 1/2, and I'm going to break that into fourths. And I'm going to shade in with pink one of those fourths. And that's the purple part, because pink and blue clearly make purple. And if I cut this half into fourths, I'm also going to cut this half into fourths, just so that I have equal pieces. And I can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal pieces. Of those equal pieces, one of them, this one right here, is 1/8. So 1/4 of 1/2 is 1/8. See how my fraction, my product is getting smaller. When we multiply two fractions, the answer is a smaller amount. That's really important to remember, that the multiplication sign means of. Okay, so use this video to help you answer the next couple questions, and you can do this. Now let's say we saw a problem like this, and it said find half of that shaded part. First of all, how much is shaded? Of course, that's 1/3. 1/3 is shaded. I want to find half of 1/3. Of means multiply. 1/2 of 1/3, or 1/2 times 1/3. So what I could do is I could take that 1/3 and I can break it into thirds. And the question said find one of those thirds. So I'm going to shade in 1/3. That amount. To make it more obvious, I'm going to break all the other thirds. Oopsies. I made a mistake, didn't I? I only wanted to find half of that third. Oops. Let me fix this here. So I've got 1/3, right? I want to find half of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 1/3 and I'm going to cut that in half. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm cutting it in half. And I'm shading in one of those, 1/2 of that 1/3. This amount here is half of the third. But just so I have equal number of pieces, I'm going to cut this third into halves, and I'm going to cut this third into halves. So I have equal number of pieces. I'm going to count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. And out of those 6 pieces, half of that 1/3 is 1/6. You're probably noticing that if you multiply the numerators and the denominators, you're getting the same answer. That's kind of a shortcut, but it's really important to conceptually understand why you're getting your answers. A little bit more sense for you. I'm also going to ask you a couple of questions. We know, 1 times 16 equals 16, right? So 1/2 times 16, would that be more than 16 or less than 16? Yes, it has 1/2, but 1/2 is more than 1. So more than 1 times 16 is going to be more than 16. In fact, we could figure this out mentally. 1 times 16 is 16, and half of 16 is 8. Put it together, and you get 24. What if I said 3/4 of is times 16? Will that be more than 16 or less than 16? It's going to be less than 16 because 3/4 is less than 1 whole. So we know it's going to be less than 16 because 3/4 is less than 1. The product got smaller. In fact, let's figure out what is 3/4 of 16. We know that 1/4 of 16 is 12. I'm sorry, 1/4 of 16 is 4, right? That's 16, and we break it into fourths. 4, 8, 12, 16. So 3/4, 4, 8, 12 would be 12. 3/4 of 16, or 3/4 times 16 equals 12. Okay, hope this video is helpful, and you'll use it to complete your assignments in the Canvas module. I'll see you guys today at 11 a.m. for our class meeting. We'll read Benny Breakiron. I can't wait. I'll also see you guys at 3 p.m. for a small group Zoom meeting.